I'm Cory Doctorow. I'm a Canadian. I live in Los Angeles. I'm a science fiction writer. I write nonfiction. I've been involved with a nonprofit called the Electronic Frontier Foundation for 20 years. I'm a visiting professor of computer science at the Open University in the UK. I'm also British. And I'm a visiting professor of library science at the University of North Carolina. And I'm an MIT Media Lab research affiliate. I write books for young readers, books for small children, books for adults. I write nonfiction, short story collections, lots of things, about 20 books over the last 20 years. And I'm a proud inductee into the Canadian Science Fiction and Fantasy Hall of Fame. When I'm asked what you need to do to ensure digital equity in the future, I immediately want to break that into two pieces. And the first piece is like, what are the structural characteristics of our regulation, of our markets, of our institutions, of our norms, of how we think about how this stuff should be organized that will allow us to do things to increase equity on the internet? And then the second one is like, what is equity? And to be honest, what is equity is so hard and so distant that I'm just going to punt on it and talk about how people who do think they know what equity is are going to be able to get it if we can fix the structures around them. And I think the big thing that we need to do to improve our chances of having equity is to demonopolize our economy and to deconcentrate the wealth in our economy. I think that one of the ways that we are able to arrive at good policy is not just by having the government kind of stick its finger in the air and ask itself where the policy should be, but really to engage with the regulated entities, with industry, with individuals, and so on, and to say, like, what happens when we try to do this? Does it work? Have you tried it? What problems do you foresee if we want to try and do this or that? I mean, it's not that firms don't have a role to play, but historically, when we regulated firms under the conditions that we had before the neoliberal era, before all the market concentration, governments would ask an industry with like hundreds of companies or 100 companies, all of roughly the same size, what should we do? And all of those companies, they'd want to do something, parochial, something that served their own interests, something self-serving. And they would say, oh, you should do something that helps our end of the business and hurts that other person's end of the business. But the people who stood to be hurt would be there to say, oh no, that's a terrible argument. And they would present evidence to the contrary. And that was a function of having lots of firms that weren't able to converge on a single set of lobbying points. But as we've had this tolerance for monopoly, as we have over the last 40 years in Canada through the Competition Bureau, in the United States through the Federal Trade Commission and DOJ, allow companies to buy their major rivals and also snap up little companies before they could become rivals and neutralize them, predatory acquisitions, to do predatory pricing. So whenever someone does look like they're going to enter the market, you start selling your products below cost using your cash reserves or your access to the capital market so no one can enter the market. As we've done that, we've ended up with a world in which every sector, including technology, consists of just like 1 to 5 giant companies. That's true whether we're talking about like professional wrestling or international shipping or finance or cheerleading or tennis shoes or technology, right? As Tom Eastman, software developer in New Zealand, says, I'm old enough to remember when the web was more than 5 giant websites filled with screenshots of text from the other 4. That didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen because those 5 giant websites were better than all the other websites. It happened because they were able to do anti-competitive things, and we let them do it. And so what that means is that you've got these super concentrated sectors where they have so much money and they have so few collective action problems to solve. It's so easy for them to agree on what to spend the money on that they're able to really subvert our ability to make evidence-based policy. And so, equity is evidence-based, right? Like, being better for everyone is a thing you can decide to do, but you can't know if you're being better for everyone unless you can measure what you're doing and see what it's doing in the world. And in order to make those measurements, in order to find out whether or not equity, as you define it, is arriving, you need to have a process that is resistant to regulatory capture and to astroturfing and to all those things that big corporations like to do to get their own way. My advice for the next 30 years is the same advice I have today. Seize the means of computation, right? You have nothing to lose but your chains. Take control of the technology in your life. That doesn't just mean that everyone has to learn to code. It means that you have to demand from your regulators the right to reconfigure your tools, the right to use software that other people have written with the hardware that you own or the services that you use. Seize the means of computation.